Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt that invisible nudge inside of you? The whisper that says there is more within you than you are living right now. What if I told you that the very energy that created galaxies, the very intelligence that beats your heart and breathes through your lungs, is waiting for you to simply say, "Use me"? Today, I want to show you how to let God work through you, not just around you, but in you and as you. Surrendering the ego is the very first step in allowing God to use you, and it is often the most difficult one because the ego is that part of us which wants control, recognition, and security. It whispers that we must always be right, that we must always have a plan, and that we must always know what comes next. But when we live from the ego, we are constantly protecting an image, defending our pride, and clinging to what feels safe. The ego builds walls, but God opens doors. When you begin to release the ego, you make space for something far greater than your limited self to flow through you. Imagine your life as a vessel. If the cup is already full of your own opinions, fears, and expectations, then there is no room for divine wisdom to pour in. By surrendering, by admitting, I do not have to know everything, I do not have to control everything. I trust that God's intelligence is greater than mine. You empty the cup, and in that emptiness, God can fill you with vision, creativity, and strength that you never knew you had. This is not weakness. It is the greatest strength because you no longer live by your own small will, but by the infinite will that created galaxies and stars. You begin to understand that you are not here to push your agenda, but to allow your life to be aligned with a higher plan. When the ego steps aside, you will see how doors begin to open effortlessly, how solutions appear without force, how people show up at the right time, and how you are guided into places you could never reach on your own. The surrender of ego is not the loss of self. It is the discovery of your true self, the self that is one with God. It is in that surrender that miracles happen, because now you are no longer striving against the flow, but moving with the current of divine intention. Living beyond the past means refusing to let yesterday's wounds, failures, or disappointments dictate the shape of today or the possibility of tomorrow. Most people unknowingly carry their history like a heavy backpack, replaying memories, reliving old pain, and recycling the same emotions that keep them trapped in a cycle of survival. Every time we dwell on what went wrong, every time we remind ourselves of how someone hurt us or how we fell short, we are wiring our minds and bodies to stay in that state of limitation. It becomes almost like a program running in the background, convincing us that the future will be nothing more than a copy of the past. But the truth is, as long as you are still breathing, your story is not finished. Living beyond the past requires a conscious decision to no longer identify yourself by what happened to you, but by who you are becoming. It is the willingness to say, I am not my trauma, I am not my mistake, I am not my failure. I am more than what I went through. When you shift your attention from rehearsing old memories to creating new visions, you release yourself from that prison of repetition. God cannot use someone who is constantly chained to yesterday because his plans are always unfolding forward. The energy of creation is always in the now, never in what has already been. To live beyond the past, you must learn to bless the lessons without carrying the pain, to accept what you cannot change, but to step boldly into what you can create. This does not mean ignoring what happened. It means refusing to let it define your destiny. It means transforming your scars into wisdom, your disappointments into fuel, and your failures into stepping stones. Every single time you choose faith over memory, you tell your nervous system, your mind, and your spirit that you are no longer a victim of circumstance, but a creator of destiny. And as you do this, you will notice how your energy begins to shift, how new opportunities begin to align with you, and how God starts to open paths that were hidden before. Living beyond the past is the key to entering into a life where God's purpose can flow through you, because he does not see you as broken, limited, or defined by yesterday. He sees you as whole, capable, and ready to step into the new story he has already written for you. Opening the heart is one of the most powerful ways to allow God to work through you, because the heart is the true doorway to the divine. So many people live only in their heads, constantly analyzing, worrying, planning, or replaying scenarios. The mind is useful, but when it is disconnected from the heart, it becomes a machine of fear and survival. The heart, on the other hand, is the seat of love, compassion, and gratitude. It is where you experience connection, not only with other people, but with God Himself. When you learn to open your heart, you raise your energy above stress, anger, and fear, and you step into a frequency that invites miracles. Think about it. When you feel gratitude, your body softens, your thoughts expand, and your spirit feels lighter. That is not a coincidence. Science shows that the heart generates the strongest electromagnetic field in the body, more powerful even than the brain. And when you feel elevated emotions like love, joy, and appreciation, you are broadcasting energy that aligns with the creative intelligence of the universe. This is why prayer and meditation are most powerful when they come not only from the lips but from the heart. A closed heart hardened by resentment, judgment, or bitterness becomes like a locked door where God's blessings cannot enter. But an open heart becomes like a channel where divine energy flows freely, touching not only you but everyone around you. Opening the heart does not mean being weak or naive. It means being courageous enough to live from love in a world that often encourages fear. It means forgiving even when it is difficult, showing kindness even when it is not returned, and choosing compassion even when you feel like protecting yourself with walls. When you open your heart, you invite healing because love dissolves wounds that logic cannot. You also become a beacon radiating light that others can feel, often without a word being spoken. People will sense peace in your presence, hope in your voice, and safety in your energy, because it is not just you they are encountering, it is God moving through you. And the more you cultivate love, gratitude, and compassion, the more magnetic you become to divine opportunities. Doors will open, synchronicities will occur, and you will see how effortlessly life aligns when you choose to live from the heart. Opening the heart is not a one-time act, but a daily practice, because everyday life will give you chances to close it again through offense, fear, or disappointment. But each time you choose to keep it open, you strengthen your ability to be a vessel for God. And in the end, a life lived with an open heart is a life where you do not just exist. You radiate, you heal, and you embody the love that God created you to embody. Breaking free from limiting beliefs is one of the greatest acts of liberation a human being can experience, because it is not the external world that truly holds us back, but the stories we repeat to ourselves inside our own minds. From the time we are children, we absorb words, labels, and judgments, sometimes from family, sometimes from society, sometimes from painful experiences. Over time, these voices become internalized until we begin to believe that they are truth. We start to think, I'm not smart enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'll never succeed, I'll always struggle. These thoughts are not facts, they are beliefs that have been programmed into us, often without our awareness. The tragedy is that many people live their entire lives chained to those beliefs, never realizing that the prison they are in has no locked door. They are free to walk out at any moment the instant they choose to replace those old stories with a higher truth. Every time you say, I can't, you are closing yourself off to the very possibility that God wants to give you. But when you begin to declare, God can through me, you shift from self-limitation into divine empowerment. This is the essence of faith, not believing only in what you can do, but in what God can do through you when you surrender to Him. Limiting beliefs shrink your world, but divine truth expands it beyond what you thought possible. Think about how many opportunities in your past you might have missed simply because you told yourself a story that it was impossible. The mind, when controlled by fear, will always argue for your limitations. It will convince you to stay small, to play safe, to avoid risk. But God did not design you to live small. He created you to expand, to grow, to create, to shine. Breaking free begins by first becoming aware of the beliefs that have been shaping your reality. Notice the patterns in your life, the excuses you often use, the doubts that rise up every time you think about pursuing something greater. Instead of accepting them as truth, begin to question them. Ask yourself, who told me this? Where did I learn this? Is this belief aligned with the vision God has for me, or is it simply an echo of fear? Once you expose those limiting beliefs, you rob them of their power. Then replace them with affirmations of faith. Instead of saying, I am not enough, declare, I am more than enough because I carry the presence of God within me. Instead of saying, this is impossible, affirm, with God all things are possible. The more you repeat these truths, the more you reprogram your mind and your body to align with faith rather than fear. Over time, what once felt impossible begins to feel natural because you are no longer operating from your limited self, but from the unlimited presence within you. As you break free from limiting beliefs, you will notice how opportunities appear that you never imagined, how strength rises in you in moments you thought you were weak, and how you begin to dream in ways that once scared you. You will understand that the only true limits were the ones you accepted. God's power has no limits, and when you allow Him to use you, you become capable of more than you could ever accomplish on your own. Breaking free from limiting beliefs is not just about positive thinking, it is about stepping fully into alignment with divine truth, where you finally see yourself as God has always seen you, capable, worthy, powerful, and unlimited. Becoming a vessel and not just an individual is a profound shift in the way you live your life, because it takes you beyond the narrow vision of me, my goals, my success, my achievements, and into the expansive reality of how can my life be used as an instrument for something greater than myself. Most people spend their lives trying to build their personal identity, protect their reputation, and chase after things that only serve their own comfort or recognition. While there is nothing wrong with growth and success, when it all revolves only around you, it eventually feels empty. The reason is simple. You were not created just to take, but to give. You were not designed only to exist for yourself, but to serve as a channel through which God's love, wisdom, and creativity can flow into the world. Think of a river. A river is not meant to hoard water for itself. Its purpose is to carry water to flow, to bring life wherever it goes. The moment a river stops flowing and tries to hold everything inside, it becomes stagnant. In the same way, when you make life only about yourself, your energy becomes blocked, your spirit feels small, and your joy is limited. But when you say, God, I am here, use me, speak through me, act through me, let my life be a blessing beyond my own desires, you step into the role of a vessel. Suddenly, what you do carries deeper meaning. Your work becomes more than a paycheck, it becomes a platform. Your words become more than conversation, they become encouragement. Your presence becomes more than existing, it becomes healing for those who are around you. Being a vessel does not mean you disappear as an individual, it means you amplify your individuality by allowing God's light to shine through your unique gifts. Everyone has talents, abilities, and experiences, but they reach their highest purpose only when they are placed in service of something greater. The voice that sings, the hand that creates, the mind that solves problems, the heart that comforts, all of these are tools that God can use if you are willing to surrender them. The irony is that the more you give yourself to being a vessel, the more fulfilled you actually become. What you thought you had to fight for, peace, joy, purpose, begins to flow naturally because your life is aligned with the very reason you were created. This way of living also removes pressure. When you live only as an individual, you are constantly asking, do I have enough strength? Do I have enough resources? Do I have enough wisdom? But when you live as a vessel, you realize it is not about what you have, but about what God pours through you. You don't have to be enough on your own because He is more than enough within you. That shift changes everything. You are no longer striving in exhaustion, but flowing in grace. And that flow touches others in ways you cannot even measure. Sometimes a simple smile, a kind word, or an act of generosity that feels small to you may ripple into someone's life as a miracle. Becoming a vessel also means accepting that your life has a ripple effect. The way you carry yourself, the choices you make, the energy you release, all of these influence others, whether you realize it or not. When you decide to be a channel of love, faith, and light, you may never know how far those ripples travel. A single seed of encouragement planted in someone else's heart could grow into a forest of transformation years later. And you may never even see it, but God sees it. Living as a vessel is ultimately about trust. Trust that God knows how to use your life better than you do. Trust that even when you do not understand the details, there is a higher intelligence working through you. Trust that your small daily choices, when offered to Him, can contribute to a much bigger story. When you surrender your individuality to become a vessel, you don't lose your life, you find it. You step into the fullness of why you are here, and you discover a joy that no amount of self-centered living could ever provide. Faith and energy alignment is the invisible bridge between what you hope for and what you actually manifest in your life. Faith is not simply a belief in your mind, it is a frequency you broadcast, an energy you embody, and a state of being that tells the universe and God, I trust, I surrender, I align. Many people say they have faith, but deep inside they are vibrating fear, doubt, and worry. Their words declare trust, but their emotions radiate anxiety. What they don't realize is that faith is not about repeating affirmations. While holding on to fear in the heart, faith is about aligning your energy, your thoughts, your emotions, and your body with the very reality you are believing for. When your mind rehearses a future filled with possibility, when your emotions carry gratitude for what is not yet seen, and when your actions reflect trust instead of hesitation, then your entire being becomes a match for God's creative power. God moves where there is alignment. He responds to trust, to expectancy, to a spirit that says, I am already grateful for the miracle before it arrives. This is why gratitude is such a powerful companion of faith. It tunes your heart into the frequency of answered prayers. Instead of begging from a place of lack, you begin to thank from a place of abundance. This shift is profound because it changes you from a person desperately asking if something will happen into a person confidently knowing that it is already done in God's reality, and you are simply aligning yourself to receive it. Energy alignment also requires awareness of the energy you carry daily. You cannot hold resentment, jealousy, or bitterness and expect to experience the higher blessings of faith. Those emotions are heavy vibrations that keep you stuck in survival mode. When you release them and instead cultivate joy, love, and peace, you raise your frequency to meet the flow of God's abundance. It is not that God withholds blessings. It is that our energy is often not aligned to receive them. Faith is like tuning your radio to the right station. The broadcast is already there, but you have to align to the frequency to hear it clearly. When your faith is aligned with your energy, life begins to feel effortless in ways you cannot explain. Doors open, people show up, timing becomes perfect, and synchronicities appear everywhere. You call it coincidence, but in truth it is evidence of your alignment with divine order. You stop fighting against life and instead flow with it. Your prayers become powerful, not because you are forcing an outcome, but because you are embodying the outcome energetically before it arrives physically. This is why Scripture says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is substance, meaning it has weight, energy, and power long before your eyes can see the results. To live in faith and energy alignment is to wake up every day and consciously choose the state of being you want to embody. It is to declare with your thoughts, feel with your emotions, and act with your body as if what you desire is already real. And because God's power responds to that level of conviction, you attract into your life experiences that match your inner state. The key is consistency. Faith is not something you turn on when you need a miracle and forget when life feels ordinary. It is a lifestyle, a constant tuning of your energy to God's frequency. The most beautiful part is that when you live this way, you don't just transform your own life, you become a living magnet for others. People around you will feel your peace, your joy, your expectancy, and it will inspire them to believe again. Your very energy becomes testimony. Faith and energy alignment is not about manipulating reality. It is about harmonizing with God's creative reality, which already exists and is waiting for you to step into it. When you truly align, miracles no longer feel rare, they feel natural, because you have tuned yourself to the flow of divine possibility. Choosing creation over survival is one of the most radical transformations a person can experience, because it requires stepping out of the primitive state of constantly reacting to life and into the empowered state of consciously shaping life. Most people live in survival without even realizing it. They wake up already worried about the day, rehearsing yesterday's stress, predicting tomorrow's problems, and carrying a constant undercurrent of fear. Survival is a cycle of fight, flight, or freeze. It keeps the body tense, the mind limited, and the heart closed. When you live this way, you are always waiting for the next crisis, always trying to protect yourself from what could go wrong, and always giving your power away to circumstances. Survival makes you reactive. It convinces you that life is happening to you instead of flowing through you. Creation, on the other hand, is a completely different state of being. Creation is when you wake up with intention, when you imagine a future greater than your past and align your energy with it until it begins to manifest in your reality. In creation, you are no longer a victim of external conditions. You are a co-creator with God. You recognize that the same divine intelligence that orchestrates galaxies and seasons also flows within you, and when you focus your thoughts, emotions, and energy on possibilities instead of problems, you step into alignment with that intelligence. Creation requires vision. It asks you to see with the eyes of faith what your physical eyes cannot yet see. But more than vision, it requires feeling. You must feel the joy, the gratitude, the peace of that new reality before it arrives, because feeling is the signal that tells your body and your environment that it is already true. The trap of survival is that it feels familiar. Fear feels normal. Worry feels responsible. Stress feels necessary. But in truth, these states only keep you looping the same past over and over again. Choosing creation means breaking the addiction to those emotions and daring to live from elevated states instead: love, gratitude, joy, trust. It is not ignoring challenges, but approaching them from a higher level of consciousness. A person in survival sees obstacles as walls. A person in creation sees obstacles as steps to climb higher. In survival, you shrink. In creation, you expand. In survival, you fight to hold on to what you have. In creation, you open yourself to receive more than you imagined. This choice is not made once. It must be made daily, sometimes moment by moment. Life will constantly give you opportunities to slip back into fear, to live on autopilot, to react in old patterns. But every time you pause, breathe, and choose to rise above reaction into creation, you strengthen your connection to God's flow. This is why meditation, prayer, and visualization are powerful practices. They train your mind and body to step out of survival and into creation. In silence and stillness, you disconnect from the noise of fear and tune into the voice of divine possibility. And when you carry that state into your daily life, you begin to live as if miracles are not distant events, but a natural outcome of alignment. When you choose creation, you also inspire others, because creation is contagious. People around you will feel your calm, your vision, your joy, and they will be drawn to it. You stop being just another person surviving the world and become a light showing others how to shape it. And in that space, you realize something profound: you were never meant to just survive. God did not create you to live in fear and limitation. You were designed to create, to expand, to manifest His glory through your life. Choosing creation over survival is choosing to live as the masterpiece God intended rather than a prisoner of fear. And once you taste that freedom, survival will no longer feel like living. It will feel like settling, and your soul will never settle again. The power of stillness and meditation is something most people underestimate, yet it holds the key to unlocking a deeper connection with God and with yourself. In our world today, noise surrounds us: constant messages, endless tasks, distractions, and demands pulling at our attention every second. The mind becomes restless, the body remains tense, and the heart feels heavy. When you live this way, you become so entangled in the chaos of the outside world that you forget the still, quiet voice within, the very voice through which God speaks. Stillness is not simply the absence of sound. It is the sacred space where you withdraw from external noise so that you can tune into divine wisdom. It is where the mind slows, the heart opens, and the soul remembers its connection to something greater. Meditation is the doorway into this stillness. It is not about emptying the mind completely or achieving some mystical state that feels impossible. It is about resting in awareness, about becoming so present that you step out of the constant pull of past and future. In that space, you stop reliving yesterday's pain and stop worrying about tomorrow's uncertainty. Instead, you exist fully in the now, and it is only in the now that God can meet you. Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." That instruction is timeless because stillness is the condition that allows the knowing to happen. In stillness, you discover that God's presence has never left you. It was simply drowned out by the noise of your restless thoughts. When you practice stillness and meditation, you are training your nervous system to step out of survival and into peace. The stress chemicals in your body begin to calm, your heartbeat steadies, your breathing slows, and suddenly your mind becomes clear. That clarity is not random. It is God's wisdom rising in you, giving you insight that anxiety could never provide. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in history in art and science, in leadership, were not birthed from frantic striving, but from quiet moments of reflection where a higher inspiration was received. Meditation creates that space where the inspiration of God can reach you. Stillness also transforms your relationship with yourself. When you stop running from silence, you learn to listen to your thoughts, to your emotions, to the parts of you that you may have ignored or suppressed. In that listening, healing happens because God brings light to the places in you that need it most. Sometimes it is not about finding new answers, but about hearing the truth that was already inside you but had been buried beneath layers of noise. As you cultivate this practice, you begin to notice a shift not only during meditation, but throughout your life. You carry a calmness into conversations, a centeredness into challenges, and a deeper patience into waiting seasons. The beauty of stillness is that it does not take hours or require perfect conditions. Even a few moments of silence practiced with intention can realign your spirit. The more consistently you enter into stillness, the more natural it becomes to access that state of peace, even in the middle of chaos. You become like a tree with deep roots. No matter how strong the winds of life blow, you remain grounded. And that grounding is not just for you, it impacts those around you. People will feel peace simply by being near you, not because of what you say, but because of the calm presence you carry. In the end, the power of stillness and meditation is that it teaches you the art of surrender. You realize you do not always need to chase, to fix, to control. You can let go, breathe, and trust that in the silence, God is doing more than you could in all your striving. You discover that the answers you seek, the healing you long for, and the guidance you need are already within reach. You simply had to be still enough to hear them. This is the paradox in the silence. Life speaks the loudest. In the stillness, God moves the deepest. And in meditation, you stop searching for God outside of yourself and realize He has been waiting inside you all along. Walking as an example is one of the most powerful ways you can allow God to use you because it transforms your life from being just words and intentions into living evidence of truth. People may argue with what you say, they may resist what you try to teach, and they may even ignore the advice you offer. But they cannot deny the reality of a life that shines with integrity, peace, and love. Words can inspire for a moment, but example has the power to inspire for a lifetime. When you decide to live in such a way that your daily choices, your attitudes, and your actions reflect the presence of God within you, you become a walking testimony that others can see without you needing to preach. Walking as an example begins in the smallest details of life. It shows up in how you treat the people who cannot give you anything in return, in how you respond when others are unkind, in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. Anyone can display kindness when it benefits them, but a true vessel of God lives it consistently, even when there is no recognition. People are watching more than you realize. A child observes how their parent handles stress. A coworker notices how you respond under pressure. A stranger feels the warmth of your smile in a moment when they needed hope. Without speaking a sermon, you are already delivering one. To walk as an example also requires authenticity. It does not mean pretending to be perfect or hiding your struggles. In fact, it is often your humility, your willingness to admit mistakes, and your ability to rise again that speaks the loudest. People are not inspired by perfection, they are inspired by resilience. They want to see that you, too, have faced storms, but instead of letting the storm destroy you, you allowed God to strengthen you. That authenticity makes your example real, relatable, and transformative. There is also a responsibility in walking as an example, because you realize your life is not just your own. It influences others. Whether you know it or not, someone is learning from the way you live. That awareness does not mean you carry the weight of being flawless, but it does mean you live with intention. You begin to ask yourself, if someone mirrored my actions today, what kind of person would they become? If someone absorbed my energy, my words, and my habits, would they be closer to God or further away? These questions guide you to rise above selfish impulses and to embody the higher standards you want to see in the world. When you walk as an example, you also become a source of hope. There are people who may never step inside a church, who may never read a scripture, but they will read your life. The way you forgive when it would be easier to hold a grudge, the way you remain calm in situations where others panic, the way you speak life instead of criticism. These are sermons people can understand without needing translation. They look at you and think, if they can live that way, maybe I can too. Over time, your example becomes a ripple effect. One act of kindness can inspire someone else to be kind. One moment of courage can awaken courage in another. One choice to live with integrity can set a new standard in a family, a workplace, or even a generation. You may never know how far your influence extends, but heaven sees every ripple. Walking as an example does not make you better than others. It simply makes you responsible for shining the light that God placed in you. And the more consistently you shine, the more darkness you dispel, not through force, not through argument, but simply by being. Ultimately, walking as an example is about embodying the truth that transformation is possible. It shows others that God does not just change circumstances, He changes people. When your life radiates peace, when your words carry encouragement, when your presence brings comfort, others cannot help but recognize that something greater is flowing through you. And in that recognition, they too are drawn to the source. Your life becomes a silent invitation for others to encounter God, not because you told them, but because you showed them. That is the true power of example. It is not something you perform, it is something you become. And once you become it, your life itself speaks louder than any sermon ever could. Living in service of a greater plan is the highest calling of a human life because it shifts the focus from personal ambition to divine purpose. When you live only for yourself, your goals may bring temporary satisfaction, but they rarely provide lasting fulfillment. You can achieve success, gain recognition, and collect possessions, yet still feel an emptiness inside, because deep down you know that life is bigger than what you can accumulate. The moment you surrender to a higher plan, you begin to realize that your existence is not random, and that every talent, every experience, and even every hardship you have endured has been shaping you for a role far greater than your own desires. God has placed within you gifts that are not meant to be buried, but to be used in alignment with His vision for the world. Living in service of a greater plan requires humility, because it means acknowledging that you are not the author of your destiny, but a chapter in God's larger story. It is the recognition that your life is part of something eternal, something that stretches beyond your own lifetime, something that will continue to ripple long after you are gone. This is why true purpose is never about self-glorification. It is about contribution. It is about asking not only, what do I want to get, but more importantly, what can I give? How can my life make a difference? When you begin to live this way, you step into a stream of meaning that fills your soul in ways nothing else can. There is a paradox here. The more you give yourself to a greater plan, the more complete and fulfilled you feel personally. You may think surrendering to God's purpose means losing your individuality, but in reality, it is where your individuality shines the brightest. Your unique voice, your unique perspective, your unique talents, they were designed not just for you, but to serve others in ways only you can. When you live in service, you discover that joy is no longer dependent on circumstances. It comes from knowing that your life is impacting others, that someone else's burden is lighter, that someone else's path is brighter because of your presence. Living in service of a greater plan also requires trust, because you will not always understand where God is leading you. Sometimes the plan will ask you to step out of comfort zones, to walk through seasons of uncertainty, to let go of things you thought you needed. But as you surrender, you begin to notice that every step, even the difficult ones, was shaping you for what was ahead. Nothing is wasted when you are aligned with God's purpose. Not the pain, not the delays, not the failures. They all become tools in His hands to prepare you to serve more deeply, more authentically, more powerfully. This kind of living is also contagious. When people see you living not just for yourself, but for something bigger, it awakens something in them. They are inspired to rise above their own limitations, to contribute in their own ways, to believe that their lives too have meaning. Service has a ripple effect. Your single act of kindness, your single word of encouragement, your single act of courage may ignite a chain reaction that reaches people you may never meet. And while the world may not always applaud it, heaven always sees it. In the end, living in service of a greater plan means living in alignment with love, because love is the essence of God's purpose, and service is love in action. It is allowing yourself to be a vessel through which His compassion, His wisdom, and His healing can flow into the lives of others. And when your life becomes about more than just you, you discover a deeper kind of success, one that cannot be measured in wealth or trophies, but in impact, in legacy, in the lives touched by your willingness to say, God, here I am, use me. This is the life that echoes beyond time, the life that fulfills not only your heart, but also the very reason you were created.